You just see Texas in any game, and again, Kentucky used to be able to put up points in the past. 43.5 is crazy because it just feels like Texas is going to come in, play really good defense, and try to squeeze this game out. It'll be interesting to see because nothing got ailed from that victory last week. Texas is back. I'm just being facetious at this point. But if we see one of those performances 17-14 Texas.
In the fourth quarter.
Yeah, come on.
Right? I mean, really. I mean, they got a gift last week.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, it looks like the Bengals fantasy pieces are back. What did you make of that Joe Flacco performance on Thursday night? Turning back time.
Yeah, it was great for a guy like me with gray in the beard. I love seeing it. I love my representation. But at the end of the day, just from a wagering standpoint, if this continues, it'll give some consistency and it'll give some value back to those tools that you were mentioning on the Bengals.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
Defense is above average this year, and I think big picture, they're going to be probably the most consistent moving forward. The problem I have is this guy, Trevor Lawrence, big picture. You got to take the good, the bad, and the ugly. And the ugly sometimes is real ugly. He is not comfortable in the pocket on a consistent basis, and that's a problem.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Very young team outside of Durant. They're going to be an impossible out in a 7-game series, and I'm predicting it right now. If the seeding lines up, you are getting the Thunder and the Rockets in the Western Conference Finals. There's not another team in the West that's going to be as good as the Rockets are when we get to playoff time.
The Craig Carton Show, only on SportsGrid.
Good afternoon. Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. I'm Craig Mish. Did you catch the World Series ending just a few hours ago? One of the wildest World Series games we've seen in history. 18 innings played this morning, last night, between the Blue Jays and Los Angeles Dodgers. We've got Jack McMullen from Just Baseball to break it all down coming up, and I'm sure a lot more discussion throughout the day. Epic finish last night as well. Also, Bill Bender will join us, courtesy of Sporting News. We'll also dive into the latest in the National Football League and hit on some college football. And we get ready for another full week ahead. And naturally, we'll get some preview of the upcoming game Thursday night in the NFL between the Baltimore Ravens and Miami Dolphins, just about 56 hours away from kickoff. But let's get started with the NBA. Some big news coming out yesterday. It seems like they're taking the latest gambling allegations and investigation from the FBI quite seriously. The NBA sent a memo to all 30 teams in the National Basketball Association reassessing their measures on legal sports betting and how it should be regulated, what bets should be allowed. The league also wrote in a memo that it's reviewing policies regarding injury reporting, training, and education on NBA personnel. And there's a possibility that it sounds like Adam Silver, who you see right there, the commissioner of the NBA, may get involved in potentially limiting some bets as far as prop bets are concerned. So we'll see what the NBA holds in the future. And actually, that was a bombshell dropped on us last week. How about this one, though? Soccer referees, always the focus around the world, not just here in the United States. How about this report from Front Office Sports? 371 of Turkey's 571 active professional referees were found to have betting accounts. In fact, 152 were actively gambling. These are referees in the sport. Of the 152 referees, 7 of them were officials at the top level. So how is this happening around the world? I guess referees are exempt from some of the punishment from sports betting here in the United States. I'm sure they're going to have to get a handle on that as well. Okay, now let's get to one of the best games in the history of the Fall Classic. The World Series went 18 innings yesterday. It was the latest I've stayed up in a really, really long time. Full transparency, did fall asleep, did wake back up, and I'm like, I'm highly invested in this. I may as well watch the whole thing. 6-5, the final yesterday, as the Dodgers end up beating the Toronto Blue Jays. A lot of heroes in this one. especially on the side of the Dodgers. A reliever named Will Klein came in the game and pitched 4 2/3 through 70 pitches. He had never thrown more than 30 in a Major League Baseball game. As far as Shohei Ohtani was concerned, folks, Ohtani got on base yesterday 9 times in a single game. Let me repeat that. He was on base 9 times in the game last night, which is the most in the history of Major League Baseball, ties the record, which was set back in 1922. Naturally, the big shot was in the 18th inning, as you see there with Freddie Freeman hitting a home run. Freeman was asked afterwards if he was just flat out exhausted from the game yesterday.
I mean, to be honest, I wasn't actually that tired. When you have your bullpen doing what they're doing, it just keeps firing you up over and over and over again. If you're tired in a World Series game, that's I don't think anybody's tired after that. But it's just when you're going through all that, 0 after 0, I was just trying to get on base against a tough lefty, sinker baller. With a hard curveball, I was just trying to get on, but got to a 3-2 count and was able to put a good swing on it. My swings were getting better as the game was going on. I thought I had a couple of hits in, 21 innings ago. It felt like my swing was getting better and better, and thankfully I was able to get one over. But I don't think we're physically tired. I think you're just mentally tired because you're in it every pitch, and every pitch means something in the World Series and in the playoffs. So I think we're all emotionally and mentally drained.
John Schneider, by the way, manager of the Blue Jays, did his best to keep the team in the game. They kept bringing in bullpen arms, including Eric Lauer, unsung hero for them, who pitched several innings but didn't get the win. Here is Schneider after the game, proud of his guys despite the loss.
There's a lot, man. I love the way we played. I love the way we fought. I think every single player had the right intentions on both sides tonight. There's a lot of things you look at. We had chances to score. They had chances to score. Yeah, a lot to digest. You know what I mean? But I think turning point's obviously a walk-off homer. But, man, I give my guys so much credit for playing the way they did. And Eric Lauer pitching the way he pitched, that's pretty unbelievable. I know Klein did the same thing for them. But a lot to unpack in that game. But I couldn't feel as good as I do right now about the way they went about it.
Yeah, great game yesterday. Shohei Ohtani, by the way, who I mentioned, got on base 9 times. Guess what? He's the starter tonight for the Dodgers. We'll break that game down later. If you missed any of Monday Night Football like me, you didn't miss a thing. The Kansas City Chiefs just dominated the Washington Commanders. Washington, without their quarterback, Jaden Daniels, just a shell of a team, 28-7. Mahomes with a good game. Travis Kelce threw a touchdown pass. Don't need to spend much more time on this. They won. They covered the spread easily. Here is the basic outlook for the Chiefs. Right now, they're right back in the playoff hunt, top 3 seed in the AFC. Patrick Mahomes said they're playing their best football.
Yeah, when we got in the locker room, we talked about executing. It's sometimes you want to press and make stuff happen, especially on a big game like Monday Night Football. And we weren't doing that. They had more energy than we did, their defense versus our offense. And so we had to match their energy and execute at a higher level. And we were able to do that in that second half and start off that first drive. And then we kind of continue that momentum through the rest of the second half.
I saw and felt that from the minute we stepped on the field. And that's honestly what we're looking for. But, man, did we leave a lot of opportunities out there tonight. And you cannot leave that many chances out there and expect to win, especially against this team. Not capitalizing on the turnovers, not winning our fourth downs. They did. It was great to see us get in some of the takeaways. That's been an emphasis of what we've been hitting on. But, leaving here, you cannot leave that many opportunities out there and walk away from this place with a win. And, like the intensity of the first half, but I just thought the opportunities for us to make our mark, and we didn't nail those. So you're not going to walk away from here with a win and miss those ops.
After a wild sequence of injury reporting events last week, the Ravens are saying that Lamar Jackson will return to action this Thursday night in South Florida to take on the Miami Dolphins. Jackson hasn't played in over a month, but John Harbaugh at his press conference seemingly alluding to him starting on Thursday night.
Yeah, we talked about that last night a little bit, but no, when it became apparent that he wasn't, when I knew he wasn't going to play for sure, we just declared him out. That's what we did. We were hopeful. Maybe there was a chance. I probably would say it was probably an outside chance, but I was still had my fingers crossed. and then it was came down from that side. And I say that side, I mean the player and the medical side. That's how it works. And so he was out.
John, have you been in touch with the league, and do you anticipate any punishment from the league regarding this change?
Yeah, no, I haven't been. I don't talk to the league about that, and I think we put a statement out about that and how it works, and that's all I know.
We'll see in the future with that. All right, Patrick Surtain is going to be out multiple games with a pec strain, tough injury for the Denver Broncos. The Falcons reeling after getting blown out at home by the Dolphins. Raheem Morris yesterday telling the media no staff changes, including their offensive coordinator, Zach Robinson. Cam Scatabo had surgery on his dislocated ankle. He said all went well. He's expected to miss the remainder of the season. Speaking of missing time, let's get to the NBA. Bad news for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Anthony Edwards out 2 weeks with a hamstring strain. So no Anthony Edwards for Minnesota. Victor Wembanyama last night, 121, 103, Wemby 24 and 15, and they're 4-0 on the season. Nikola Jokic with a triple-double again as the Denver Nuggets beat the Minnesota Timberwolves by a final of 127-114, and the Celtics finally get their first win of the season. They did it against the Pelicans, and they get the victory 122-90, and of course cover that spread. We'll be back with James Young. Coach Young weighs in on the hot start for the Spurs. Is it sustainable? We'll tell you next.
You see this team, and they're talking about A.J. Brown still. It's an injury. We want him. Are we going to ship him? This situation has to play out in the sense of, I think he wants to be there, but at the end of the day, you can't disrupt the locker room every single week. And the Eagles need him to be there if they're going to make a Super Bowl run.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
The playoff matchups for Asher Genty are not great. We start to look ahead. I know it's early, but it's not that early. So Genty, I think, is still a better long-term guy than is maybe a redraft situation, especially with the schedule maps out. But I don't see a lot of games where he's potentially in a situation where the Raiders are ahead and running the football a ton, if you know what I mean. It's kind of tough out there for the Las Vegas Raiders.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
Are they chanting? Is it over? Does he
They'll be
accept
gone
the
by
resignation?
halftime. No,
are they chanting fire?
Probably.
Kelly, clap,
it would be warranted. It would be. I mean, you won a national championship in 2019. You're getting top 5, top 10 recruiting classes each and every year. You had the quarterback back to back to back to back. How many more chances are you going to get? I mean, really, what are we doing here?
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
Very young team outside of Durant. They're going to be an impossible out in a 7-game series, and I'm predicting it right now. If the seeding lines up, you are getting the Thunder and the Rockets in the Western Conference Finals. There's not another team in the West that's going to be as good as the Rockets are when we get to playoff time.
The Craig Carton Show, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. The single biggest surprise a week into the NBA season has got to be the San Antonio Spurs. What a great start they are off to. Let's bring in Coach James Young to break it all down. And Coach, certainly it's mostly because of one player. Victor Wembanyama is now back. Of course, remember he missed a lot of time last season. This is great news for him. It's great news for the NBA. He is obviously carrying them and off to a fantastic start. But, Coach, here's what I would ask. I've seen players off to great starts. I've seen young players break out, too. But it is kind of rare for me to see a team get off to this kind of start. Undefeated, 4-0 on the season.
Good to be on with you, Craig. Hopefully you got some sleep after the game last night. When it came to San Antonio, Craig, I was extremely high on this team because of Wemby and the ascension that I think he was going to take. And there were signs during the preseason that he had kind of figured out, especially the ability to use his strength. So I think what you got out of Wemby is a guy that can score on all three levels, whether it's a three, pull-up game inside. His defense is top-notch. But it's also the play of other people that I think is really should be of note. I think Stephon Castles looked really good to begin the year running the guard spot. Vassell's giving you 17 points a game. And I think really Dylan Harper coming off the bench, giving you about 15 points a game. They are secretly deep and they're young. I haven't talked about De'Aaron Fox, who's missed some time. I haven't talked about Keldon Johnson coming off the bench. They have a lot, Craig, with this team, and I actually do think it's sustainable. This team's going to make the playoffs, and they're going to be a tough out, particularly in that half-court offense where you got like Wemby, the best shot blocker, protecting the rim.
50 wins for the Spurs, and Wemby averaging 25, 30 points a game is going to get him the NBA's MVP. Right now, he has skyrocketed. His odds are as short as anybody's, plus 310 right now, and Jokic will always be in the mix, and of course, other players will as well, but Wemby has been the hot name thus far. 4-0 on the season, 31 points per game, 14 rebounds per game, and almost 5 blocks too. He is doing it all. All right, well, the Philadelphia 76ers, I'm not really sure where their expectations landed at the start of the season, but it has certainly changed because of rookie VJ Edgecombe from Baylor. This kid has been fantastic. They win 136-124. And I don't know, Coach, you'll have to tell me, was this expected? Because certainly I knew he was a hot prospect coming out of college, but I didn't think he'd be like one of the best 2 or 3 players on Philadelphia. He's playing like it right now.
Well, Craig, listen, let's be honest. Did I think that Philadelphia was going to be very good this year? Yes. And I thought the Edgecombe was going to help. But Craig, no one had this. No one had this. Now, listen, he showed his athleticism at Baylor, to ability to catch and shoot the ball, but you can start talking about Tyrese Maxey and VJ Edgecombe being really one of the best 1-2 combinations in the backcourt in the league. This is a team that's playing without Paul George. Joel Embiid still looks compromised, but it's amazing how Daryl Morey could pivot this team to the future now with VJ and Tyrese Maxey, and it sets up an interesting dilemma. And that's, what do you do if you're Daryl Morey? Listen, Paul George's contract is an albatross. It's arguably one of the worst contracts in the league. Mm-hmm. What are you going to do when he comes back? I'll tell you right now, you're not putting him on the bench. You're not putting VJ on the bench right now, right? And then there's other pieces that look good. And then Bowen coming off the bench. Quentin Grimes, they got to resign. Philadelphia, I thought, was going to be the next biggest threat in the Atlantic Division over Boston. And the way they're playing right now sure looks like it because of the play of VJ Edgecombe.
Defending champs also off to a 3-0 start. They beat the Mavericks yesterday, 101-94. So OKC is now off to a 3-0 start this season. I don't think anybody should be surprised by that, but perhaps we should focus here on Dallas a minute. They were very fortunate, of course, to land that ping pong ball and get the number 1 overall pick in the draft. You've seen Cooper Flagg now play a few games, some mixed results. What do you make of it? Is it just him being a rookie? You think things get figured out there?
I think it's figured out, Craig. Listen, first things first, he was on his second leg of a back-to-back. Anybody knows, with the college game, besides playing those MTEs around Thanksgiving time or so, you never play back-to-back. So he's going to have to get used to the physicality. Obviously, 1 of 9 from the floor, 2 points, hurt his shoulder, but it looks like he's going to be okay. But with him, he's going to be all right. It's just the fact that, Craig, that he's got so much responsibility with Kyrie being hurt, manning the point. Got to look at rebounds and assists for Cooper Flagg. That's the best way to play him. As regards to Oklahoma City, yes, we're not surprised. They're undefeated. They're 4-0. They're doing what they got to do. But what I've seen out of Chet Holmgren was a little bit more aggressiveness to start the season. Remember, they have not been playing without Jalen Williams. This team is deep, they are loaded, and they are primed to repeat as NBA champions.
Rookie of the year right now, Coach. Of course, Edgecombe has now jumped right into the mix at plus 135. It's a two-way race through the first week of the season, which is ridiculous because we know other players are going to get shorter odds as the season goes on. But is Edgecombe the guy that you would take over Flagg right now?
Listen, it's going to come back to what we talked about before. What do you do when PGA comes back? When Paul George comes back, what are you going to do with him? Are you gonna take away VJ Edgecombe's minutes? Are you gonna take away Grimes' minutes? Are you gonna take away Kelly Oubre's minutes? What are you gonna do when Paul George comes back? And is Paul George gonna be willing to accept the lesser role? If Paul George does accept the lesser role, the way Philadelphia plays and the way he can get up and down the floor and his ability to knock down open shots, he's got to be there. What's interesting to watch, though, is Dylan Harper at 20-1. If they find a way, and I said this yesterday on my debut of Pro Basketball Today, I think that there's a little problem in San Antonio no one's talking about. It's De'Aaron Fox. I think their best backcourt in the future is Stephon Castle and Dylan Harper. If they find a way to ever move De'Aaron Fox, that could catapult a guy like Dylan Harper into the starting lineup and him getting 16, 17 points a game, rebounds and assists for a Spurs team that they can make the playoffs, that could put him in line. So his odds should move as he continues to play well.
Let's take a look real quick at the slate tonight, Coach. We've got the Knicks taking on the Bucks. New York 1.5-point favorites, total 228.5. Following Miami like I do, I saw Miami throttle the Knicks over the weekend. I was surprised to see that outcome the way that it went down. Knicks bounce back tonight in Milwaukee?
Knicks bounce back in Milwaukee. Expect a lot of points. Look to take the over. New York doesn't have Mitchell Robinson, doesn't have that rim protection. And don't sleep on Charlotte. I would actually take the points. Charlotte is a scary team. LaMelo looks motivated, and that's good for the Hornets fans.
Great stuff, Coach, as always. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Craig.
SportsGrid Sound Off up next.
You see this team, and they're talking about A.J. Brown still. You know, it's an injury. We want him. Are we going to ship him? This situation has to play out in the sense of, I think he wants to be there, but at the end of the day, you can't disrupt the locker room every single week. And the Eagles need him to be there if they're going to make a Super Bowl run.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
The playoff matchups for Asher Genty are not great. We start to look ahead. I know it's early, but it's not that early. So Genty, I think, is still a better long-term guy than is maybe a redraft situation, especially with the schedule maps out. But I don't see a lot of games where he's potentially in a situation where the Raiders are ahead and running the football a ton, if you know what I mean. It's kind of tough out there for the Las Vegas Raiders.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
Are they chanting? Is it over? Does
They'll
he
be
accept
gone
the
by
resignation?
halftime. No,
Are they chanting fire?
Probably.
Kelly,
yeah,
clap, clap,
it would
clap,
be.
clap,
It
clap.
would be warranted. It would be. I mean, you won a national championship in 2019. You're getting top 5, top 10 recruiting classes each and every year. You had the quarterback back to back to back to back. How many more chances are you going to get? I mean, really, what are we doing here?
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
Very young team outside of Durant. They're going to be an impossible out in a 7-game series, and I'm predicting it right now. If the seeding lines up, you are getting the Thunder and the Rockets in the Western Conference Finals. There's not another team in the West that's going to be as good as the Rockets are when we get to playoff time.
The Craig Carton Show, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. We got Bill Bender coming up to preview college football's week ahead and also take a look back at what happened this past week. But also a very big game this week with Vanderbilt and Texas in the SEC. There's some questions surrounding the quarterback, Arch Manning of Texas. We'll hear from Steve Sarkisian on that. Also preview Oklahoma and Tennessee. And then Cincinnati, Utah. It's time now for the SportsGrid Sound Off. Let's get started with the University of Texas, who this week could be going into a game against number 9 Vanderbilt without their starting quarterback. That's right. Arch Manning, coming off the best game of his career this past week, may have to miss the game this week. We won't know until Friday or maybe even early Saturday morning. Steve Sarkisian was asked about his status, and Matt Campbell, who is the backup at Texas, what he would bring to the table if he's asked to take the Signals under center this week.
Coach, did Arch practice this morning?
He did not. He's in protocol right now. We'll have more information as the week goes.
Sark, I guess with Arch in the protocol, this is the first time Caldwell's worked with the ones on a Monday. What have you seen from him, and what's the challenges of even a veteran working with the ones for the first time?
Well, I think that the good thing for Matt, he's a very even-keeled guy. I thought he had a great practice today. I think the players have a lot of confidence in him. I think it's his maturity, his approach. He's very engaged even when he doesn't play. If you ever watched our sidelines in game, 18 is probably the most engaged player on that sidelines. He's always picking guys up, offense, defense, special teams. And so he's got a really good relationship with the guys. And so I don't think it's like, well, who's this guy? He's in a lot of faces a lot of the times. And so it felt very comfortable, felt very normal today. I thought the bigger thing for today was that KJ Lacey got reps with the twos. And I thought that was really good for him. He's a very talented player who's been growing and getting better. So it was fun for us to see him get more reps today.
University of Tennessee will be at home for another marquee game this week. They'll take on number 18 Oklahoma, and the team that wins this game's in a great spot for the SEC. The team that loses absolutely on the outside looking in for that college football playoff. Let's hear from head coach Josh Heupel getting ready for the top 20 SEC showdown in Knoxville.
Yeah, watch the tape. Getting ready to play a really good Oklahoma team. Defensively, one of the top teams in the country in every statistical category. Their front's big, strong, physical, relentless. Tackles for loss, sacks, not giving up a bunch of big plays. Huge test, and offensively, dynamic quarterback that's a playmaker. Does that through the air, does that with his legs. He's got good skill around him, so huge test. The quarterback is a playmaker. He extends plays when the initial reads aren't there, and does a great job on scrambles, keeping the play alive, throwing it down the field, and using his feet when it's not, and everything's matched out. So you got to apply pressure to him, but you got to try to find a way to keep them bottled up too, and they'll turn the numbers into their favor and use the quarterback run game, and he's really good in that as well. And their offensive lines just continue to get better throughout the course of the year.
Finally, a showdown this week in Utah. Boy, do the Utes ever need a win this week. They take on number 17 Cincinnati, and Kyle Whittingham, no stranger to big games in the month of October, says this will be a huge challenge this week against the upstart Bearcats.
They're playing exceptionally good football. Quarterback's a big, strong kid, dual threat, can run, can throw. They're 11 personnel team, 75% of the time, mixed in with some 12, and that 3-3-5 on defense that a lot of people are playing, and so got our work cut out for us this week. Have to have another great week of preparation as always. That's what it's all about, and we got to come ready to play another 8:15 kickoff. So night game for our fans. Our fans seem to love to come out to those night games. So we're looking forward to another great environment. And the environment last week was terrific. It was a homecoming crowd, and can't say enough positive things about our fans, the Muss, the band. It was all going on Saturday night, so we need to repeat that this coming weekend.
Saints make a big announcement in the National Football League. The Spencer Rattler era appears to have come to an end, as it would appear as though Tyler Shuck is the Saints starting quarterback, at least for the time being. Of course, the Saints have one of the worst records in the National Football League, have a shot at the number 1 overall pick, depending on how things land in the next 8 weeks or so, but expect Tyler Shuck to start for now and for the immediate future. Coming up next, we will get into the National Football League and play some fantasy football waiver wire action. Could be a big week with one player available at running back. We'll tell you who next.
said, this is a guy we should be adding. And if you add him this week, you loved life because he was coming off not just a great Sunday last week when we were ahead of that curve, but also a great Thursday night football as well. So last week, 7 for 9 for 164 and a touchdown. This week on Thursday, 5 for 5, 77 and a touchdown. He didn't even play the first 2 weeks of the year, and he's already a top 10 tight end in scoring, if you can believe it.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
Travis Hunter, Joe, is a part-time wide receiver. As I've told people from the moment he was drafted, there is zero chance long-term that they'll continue to do this. In terms of playing offense and defense, they're going to have to pick a position with him. Brian Thomas, he was unbelievable. Talking to Jaguars about him last season, he was so far ahead of schedule where they thought he'd be super smart. He had a wrist injury, by the way. We need to mention that, Joe, earlier this season.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
SMU is undefeated. You got Louisville that knocked off Miami. Yeah. Miami has one loss. There's multiple teams that potentially can make a run for an ACC championship. So their backs are still against the wall. Like Georgia Tech is not a shoo-in right now just because they're undefeated, because they still have to play Georgia at the end of the year as well. Even though it's out of conference, that can knock them out of the playoff.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
$17,848 have been bet on this question, Joe, at Kalshi. How many pro football games will Taylor Swift attend this season?
They average an average of 9.3 games during this season here, and a lot of that has to do with her reduced touring schedule, and this maybe being his final NFL season.
Incredible stuff here.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. One really big possibility out there for you at running back in fantasy football this week on the waiver wire. Definitely want to get to that because you may be surprised if you take a look to see who could be out there. But first, let's bring in Joe Pisapia to get into the week ahead, and we'll talk about some of the big winners and losers in fantasy football and the bye weeks and everything else. And it does feel like, Joe, we're at the point of the season where a lot of folks know what their destiny is at this point, but I try to always say, got to fight to the end, right? No matter what your record is.
Yeah, look, I think if you are 5-3 right now, you're in a good spot. If you're 3-5, you're not out of it. If you got 1 or 2 wins, it's going to be tough. I know we got more bye weeks coming up this week too, some more players missing, but it's been brutal in terms of injury. We lost more people this week, as you were alluding to, the Cam Scadaboo injury. I know we're going to touch on that. So, and then we lost some players that we didn't anticipate on Sunday, like Drake London, sort of coming out of nowhere there. So that hurt a lot of people and sent a lot of people to the waiver wire early. So this is kind of a tricky week in terms of what's left on the branches here for us to pluck off.
Browns, Jets, Eagles, and Buccaneers are off. So, the obvious names are there. Not many from the Jets and Browns, but the Eagles have a litany of guys that you're not going to be able to play. The Buccaneers have been fantastic in fantasy. So those teams are off this week as well. And so, Joe, before we get into the fantasy winners, 6 teams off at once is just a monster in fantasy. Really hard to rebound from that, but a lot of big names on the sit list this week for Philadelphia and Tampa Bay.
Yeah, and I just don't understand, as we talked about last week, why they can't spread the wealth a little bit when it comes to these bye weeks. I don't understand, why can't we do 4 a week, make it a little bit easier? But the NFL is going to NFL, and they're going to do whatever they want. So it's been really challenging. And also, we've lost so many premium players all year. Joe Burrow going out, Malik Neighbors going out. The list goes on and on of the guys that we've lost. Now, the good news, you're getting some players back from bye week and from health issues. So Puka Nacua is back this week. He's going to play, so that's a positive. So, not everything in terms of the sky is falling upon us is true, but it is getting harder and harder. And I think the players that you start to speculate on, as you're starting to see, getting ahead of some of these running back situations before other injuries happen. Now is the time to find those handcuffs that could be useful, like Isaiah Davis, some other guys. Devin Neal is another one too, that Kamara's come up a little lame recently. So that's another deeper name. So there's guys out there that you should be rostering. So when the next Tyrone Tracy incident pops up, you are ahead of the game instead of chasing it.
Yeah, Ray Davis, another one on Buffalo, which leads us to the week that James Cook had this past week. Wow, over 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. Cook has been, a little hit or miss this season, but you really can't complain. I mean, the guy is going to help you get to the fantasy playoffs. But this Jonathan Taylor discussion, I mean, we just list the guy every week. I would assume that drafting for next year, he's the number 1 overall pick in fantasy football. The guy scores 2-3 touchdowns every single week. And then also on that list there you saw, Joe, was really good timing for the Jets if they want to trade Breece Hall, because I don't think he's going to have a better game than he had this past week over the course of the season.
No, absolutely not. Look, Breece Hall gave his best audition there, so now's the time to deal him. If you're the Jets, you've got to accumulate picks. He's not part of the long-term plan because there's no long-term plan. So get all the picks you can and start to create that plan. I think that's very smart. And Jonathan Taylor, I think certainly could be a top 5 pick next year. I think Bijan and Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson still would be ahead of him theoretically, but Jonathan Taylor is going to be right there in that conversation. It all depends on how much volume he ends up getting between the playoffs too. It's something to keep in mind, right? Saquon Barkley had over 400 carries last year, and he hasn't been the same guy up until this past week. And this past week, he had that full workload, and he came up with a groin injury. So a little something there to just keep in mind. But Taylor's performance has been MVP-esque. He's had 4 games over 100 yards this year, 5 over 90, and 4 different games where he's had multiple touchdowns. So he's basically carrying fantasy rosters. And I guarantee you, if there was a study of undefeated teams, the highest rostered player is probably Jonathan Taylor, because he's been so consistent. And let's be honest, I said this on my shows during the week too. The Colts are not just AFC cute, oh, you're adorable good. They're good. They're actually good. And they are showing teams, I think right now, how good they are. Lou Anarumo is doing a great job on the defensive side. They're doing a great job on the offensive line too. And Daniel Jones is being proficient. And I think that's all that Shane Steichen needed. And now Steichen's going to be a guy that's going to take Gardner Minshew and Daniel Jones to the playoffs, which is pretty impressive in terms of resume. And it makes you wonder just how bad Anthony Richardson was that he couldn't figure things out there with Shane Steichen.
Yeah, probably needs a change of scenery, I would guess, next season, but he'll get another chance to start, I would think. We showed a graphic before, by the way, most running back PPR points since 2007. You see that McCaffrey and Taylor, 1 and 2 there. Let's also show some love to Todd Gurley, who had an incredible 3-year run and then screwed everybody in the Super Bowl, if I'm not mistaken there. But as far as Week 8 fantasy losers are concerned, I mean, Joe, the Bengals just basically gave their season away in that loss to the Jets this past week. And another loser, of course, you have here in the Atlanta Falcons. This is the mysterious team of the season. 1 week they look like they're a potential playoff contender. The next week they look like they'll be drafting top 10 this year. I don't know.
Yeah, look, all of those are true. It's funny because the Cleveland Browns not only gave away Flacco, right? They also cut Tyler Huntley, and then Huntley went back to Baltimore and just won them a game this week. So they've done a bang-up job of helping everybody else in their division this year, the Cleveland Browns, in terms of getting other quarterbacks out there. But yeah, unfortunate set of circumstances there. Godsend for Jamar Chase. You got to love that. Cam Scadaboo injury is it's just awful. It's just, he's fun. If you love football, it's hard not to love Cam Scadaboo if he's not on your team. And you saw even the Eagles fans, notorious for being, special when it comes to these sort of situations. They stood up and applauded and gave him the slow clap. I mean, that just tells you Cam Scadaboo has a respect factor, I think, that goes pretty league-wide. And then the Falcons, a terrible loss here. Like, I know they had to pivot to Kirk Cousins, but this was a smash spot here for Bijan Robinson and company. The Miami Dolphins, awful on defense all year. They have given up over 1,100 yards rushing going into that game. No other team had given up 1,000, and yet Bijan can't get going. What happened here to the Falcons? I know London was out. I know Penix was out. But how they couldn't manage this football game better with the defense and how it's played this year is shocking to me. So credit to Miami Dolphins. They showed up, but a really bad look for the Atlanta Falcons this week.
Yeah, definitely. Not a game that was close. Okay, so this is probably the last time in the season where the waiver wire is going to include a player that we would call a potential league winner. And it's funny is that I think, Joe, this Tyrone Tracy situation for the Giants is very unique in the sense that most savvy leagues, a player like this is owned. And I think he's probably owned in a lot of leagues. But because he missed so much time and because Cam Scadaboo was just on fire and Singletary was the backup, I think there's some shocking leagues that are like, wait a second, how is Tracy still available here? I didn't even realize it. So I would encourage a lot of people out there, don't just assume that this is the case, because he was out for 5-6 weeks. It was a non-factor. Now I think he's the top waiver wire pickup of the season, right?
Well, and a lot of teams, well, I don't know about the season quite yet. We'll see how, look, we know what he is. He's an RB2, right? Like, he has some fumble issues, but he's going to get the full workload here, probably a 70-30 split with Singletary. But you're right. If you look at that roster percentage, it's only about 35% on Sleeper, which is where those active leagues are. If you look at Yahoo, the consensus was even lower for him. So kind of shocking there, but I think between the bye weeks and the injuries and the roster crunches people had, they just couldn't afford to hang on to Tracy anymore. He's a guy that's been dropped in a lot of leagues in the last 2 weeks. So people were hanging on to him. They weren't sure, and then they had no choice. I mentioned some of the other guys here on the list to be looking at too. Tashi Spears, another one too. If Tony Pollard should get traded, he would get a full workload. He worked a ton in the passing game this past week. We've talked about Kayshon Boutte. He scored again. Isaiah Davis, another guy to stash as well. Devin Neal, Tank Bigsby, those are some guys too to be stashing right now. Tank Bigsby looked really good in that offense. They've been told right now that Saquon Barkley is going to come back and play at some point. Also, Christian Watson, another guy I would throw out on that list too. Finally returning. Nobody's really stepped up in that void here since Jaden Reed went down. And Jordan Love is playing great football. So I think those are some names that might still be floating out there, but it's very tough right now on the waiver wire streets to get guys to come in and play. Chimere Dike also has emerged in Tennessee, but again, Tennessee offense kind of lackluster. So it's a tough week there, but you got to spend a lot if you want Tracy.
Definitely so. You mentioned Noel. That was a good pickup last week. And even though he did fine, Hutchinson did well as well. Maybe Houston's got another wide receiver in the mix too. Thanks again, Joe. Have a good week.
Thanks for having me. This is a guy we should be adding. And if you add him this week, you loved life because he was coming off not just a great Sunday last week when we were ahead of that curve, but also a great Thursday night football as well. So last week, 7 for 9 for 164 and a touchdown. This week on Thursday, 5 for 5, 77 and a touchdown. He didn't even play the first 2 weeks of the year, and he's already a top 10 tight end in scoring, if you can believe it.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
Travis Hunter, Joe, is a part-time wide receiver. As I've told people from the moment he was drafted, there is zero chance long-term that they'll continue to do this in terms of playing offense and defense. They're going to have to pick a position with him. Brian Thomas, he was unbelievable. Talking to the Jaguars about him last season, he was so far ahead of schedule where they thought he'd be super smart. He had a wrist injury, by the way. We need to mention that, Joe, earlier this season.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
SMU is undefeated. You got Louisville that knocked off Miami. Miami has one loss. There's multiple teams that potentially can make a run for an ACC championship. So their backs are still against the wall. Like Georgia Tech is not a shoo-in right now just because they're undefeated, because they still have to play Georgia at the end of the year as well. Even though it's out of conference, that can knock them out of the playoff.
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
$17,848 have been bet on this question, Joe, at Kalshi. How many pro football games will Taylor Swift attend this season?
They average an average of 9.3 games during this season here, and a lot of that has to do with her reduced touring schedule, and this maybe being his final NFL season.
Incredible stuff here.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. If you like video shot by people at 5 o'clock in the morning watching coaches leave after they're fired, well, this next story is for you. Bill Bender is here with us and following the tea leaves of the Brian Kelly experience this past weekend was kind of funny to see. Kelly came in, left Notre Dame with a lot of fanfare at LSU. I mean, Bill, I've been watching Death Valley on Saturday nights for a really long time. When I saw that go down, I thought, yeah, he's going to get fired. I mean, I just haven't seen that ever. Like, they've lost to Alabama and Georgia and stuff like that, but to get absolutely just slaughtered at home in front of those fans, there was just no coming back from that.
Yeah, and when the aura of the night game wears off, I mean, for A&M to do that and Alabama the year before, and kind of like you, my column evolved as the night went on, and then it evolved into the following evening. I didn't think they would do it Sunday evening, but you knew his days were numbered at that point, especially with the buyout that they have, $53 million. That wasn't LSU football. You saw former players weighing in on that. And I guess now the big question isn't, was Brian Kelly a dud at LSU? I mean, 34-14, no playoff appearances, that kind of thing. It really becomes, okay, you got rid of this coach. Who's going to be the next guy?
Right. And here's some candidates here: Lane Kiffin, Jimbo Fisher, James Franklin, Joe Brady. What do you think?
Well, I mean, everybody wants Lane Kiffin as their coach right now, and I'm not sure he leaves Ole Miss. And the biggest reason why is if you look at what they've done the last 3 years, Ole Miss has the fourth best record in college football among Power 4 schools, behind, the usual suspects, Georgia, Ohio State, and Oregon. So when you look at that, then you say, well, why would he leave? He's got an NFL quarterback. They're probably going to get to the playoff. Why go to Florida or LSU unless the answer is, as it always is, money? And I think if that happens, then LSU would be a viable place for Lane Kiffin. The name I like is Joe Brady. We were talking about it at the break. Bill's offensive coordinator. If he's young, has never been a head coach, but you can't tell me LSU's best team wasn't that 2019 team that had Joe Burrow, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, right. and that high-scoring offense.
So let's focus here on Texas A&M here for a minute. I feel like we're focused on the wrong thing. This is a team, Bill, that I feel like after last week is no longer under the radar. You may say, what do you mean? They've been ranked top 5 for like a long time. I don't know, Bill. I still was lacking total confidence that the Aggies were like Alabama or like Georgia, but I'm sold now. 8-0 on the season, and going on the road and doing this to a team that just never gets done. Mike Elko could end up being coach of the year at the end of the season, and I think Texas A&M is going to be in the college football playoff. But what do you make of their chances to win it all? Because that's the conversation now.
Or at least win the SEC, right? I mean, they have all the pieces. Marcel Reed is super exciting at quarterback, great dual threat. Mario Craver leads those receivers. Their running game is strong. Cassius Howell with the defense. They've got all the pieces, and Mike Elko is a fantastic coach. No nonsense formula. It works, and they'll probably be favored against Texas in the regular season finale, which I didn't think was possible a month ago. So they are kind of the SEC version of Indiana, where we should believe in them. Everything on the field that we've seen to this point says we should believe in them. So why are we kind of pushing them to the side? They've been fantastic. That was an awesome performance on Saturday.
Also awesome for Ole Miss to bounce back. We mentioned Lane Kiffin. Some thought, hey, you're gonna lose this game because nobody goes to Norman and wins like this. I mean, Bill, I know that Oklahoma had a great start. I don't think this is their year. I mean, I suppose Brent Venables can get things picked up and go in the right direction if they win the rest of their games. But Ole Miss is a better team than Oklahoma. Like, you don't go to Norman and win like this, and not the case. And Trinidad Chambliss has had a really nice season. There's a reason why Lane Kiffin is going to be coveted by everyone as the number one coach to potentially leave in college football. But Ole Miss probably is going to try to do everything they can to stop that.
Yeah, and Craig, Trinidad Chambliss made 2 or 3 throws in the first half of that game Saturday that I wasn't just thinking, wow, great college throw. They were NFL throws. And he's a brilliant dual threat quarterback, has 3 games in SEC play with 300-plus yards. Why that win was so important, it wasn't just about getting a road win against an SEC opponent, ranked opponent. It was about putting yourself in position to get 10 wins. Texas A&M and Ole Miss are both in position to get 10 wins, which I think is the barrier to get into the college football playoff. One and or both may end up in Atlanta at this point, and I like both teams. I think what Lane Kiffin's done there, the bounce back from the Georgia game in particular, was tremendous, and their schedule is very favorable down the stretch.
Let's get to the final game to review in the SEC. It was Vanderbilt beating Missouri in a tight one, 17-10, which essentially knocks Missouri out of the main stage in college football, which is the playoff. I think that's it for them. Vanderbilt very much alive, though, here, and their schedule, Bill, not all that formidable if this is who they are. They play Texas, maybe without Arch Manning, Auburn at home and Kentucky, they're going to be favored in those games. And look, they're not going to be favored, and it's a rivalry game against Tennessee at the end of the month in November. We know that. It's going to be tough, but win or lose, I still think they're a part of the big picture here.
I do too. And should they be favored against Texas if Arch Manning doesn't play? The answer is probably yes. I want to see how they go against that physical Longhorns defense, but this is a team that definitely is set up now, like Ole Miss, like Texas A&M, to get into the playoff. I love their defense. Their defense is so physical. They keep things in front. They don't allow a lot of points. And yeah, that Tennessee game at the end of the year, they do have a losing streak against the Vols, but that's a Tennessee team that'll throw it up and down. Could be one of the more exciting games of the SEC season. And think about it. It all revolves around Diego Pavia. He's been magnificent for the Commodores.
It's escaping me now, but Bill, when do we start to find out the rankings of the college football playoff? Is that this week? I feel like we're due on that, no?
Next week, you and I can offer a playoff rankings preview for that first week. That's the one we all overreact to the most too. So it'll be a lot of fun. You got 1 week left.
I was like, wait a second. It feels like this should be out already. I get it, though. All right, Bill, have a great rest of your week, and we'll catch up again previewing the weekend here as we get to the Halloween weekend in college football. Thanks again.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, Bill Bender, Sporting News. Fantastic job breaking these games down, and check out all his columns over at sportingnews.com. Coming up next, the latest on the NBA is looking into sports wagering. When we return, don't go away.
A Mavericks game, every single play he's arguing with the referees. I mean, if I was
like
a ref,
hands are up. It's like, dude, everyone else is halfway up the floor right now. There's no back here arguing.
Yeah. I mean, I would tee him up. There is no doubt in my mind, Gabe, the NBA's got to go to these refs and say, listen, you know what? Swallow the whistle with him.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
I am willing to bet on Wemby is a triple-double ladder season-long market. I did this actually with Caitlin Clark, who had a triple-double in Game 1 and then spent the rest of the season injured. I hope that does not happen with Victor Wembanyama. 3 triple-doubles at plus 165 should be absolutely no problem for Wemby. Had 2 his rookie season, 1 last year prior to the injury.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
It is exactly why, like you said, Donnie, this time of year is the absolute best in sports. And first off, the NBA returned to NBC. And hearing that theme music, seeing Mike Tirico back on the call, seeing Michael Jordan on the screen, it just felt right? Like an old friend that you haven't seen in decades that walks back into your life.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
People who filed it are actually representatives of Chicago, so they're from the city. They're kind of saying, this is really going to cripple the industry if we do this even more. I think it's really important when we talk about this stuff because so many places want to keep taxing sports betting more and more and more, which is well within their right. But there gets to a point where the bubble bursts and sports books either don't want to do business or they change the way they do it by passing it down to the customer.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Some news, by the way, from college football just coming out now. Practice report says that Arizona State quarterback Sam Leavitt, really good quarterback for the Aztecs, not going to play this coming week. We'll explore that later this week when we bring in Paul Stone. But Leavitt out this week for those of you who are getting your bets in college football. Make sure you keep that in mind. All right, so the National Basketball Association definitely under some fire this past week. NBA player Terry Rozier, former player and coach Chauncey Billups, both allegedly involved in a sports betting scandal involving player props. It has led to the National Basketball Association having to hear from Congress about what the future may hold, with their potential removal of certain bets, over-unders, player props, maybe even against the spread. Looks like Congress is going to meet with the commissioner of the NBA, Adam Silver, to dive into it. For the very latest, let's turn it over to our friends at Front Office Sports. They give us an update how things may transpire.
Members of Congress have requested a briefing with NBA Commissioner Adam Silver. This is we're learning new names that allegedly attended some of those poker games in question. So let's bring in Ben Horney. He's the author of the Asset Class newsletter. So Ben, what's the latest in this case and any notable updates so far here?
Yeah, so with something like this, we keep getting information. So as you noted, this bipartisan group of 6 members of Congress have asked Adam Silver to report to them about what's going on with the NBA and gambling issues by Halloween. So that's coming up soon. That's this Friday. Also, over the weekend, we learned, like you noted, the names of a few people who allegedly played at these games. They are not accused of crimes, but they're big names. The 2 that stand out, Tyronn Lue, head coach, and Kevin Garnett, obviously Hall of Famer, great player. So again, they're not accused of crimes, but they were apparently playing at these poker games.
Yeah, and Tyronn Lue specifically, I guess he wasn't at the same table as Chauncey Billups, but either way, the fact that his name is even involved in this in terms of being at the games is really interesting here, Ben. Are we getting any sort of insight into how prosecutors are going to assess this case?
So I think that, as we talked about last week, they've put out these indictments and now they are waiting to potentially get more information. As we said last week, Chauncey Billups and Terry Rozier, they were arrested and released. We found out late on Friday that Damon Jones, he's the other name, he has also been released. He's being represented by a public defender in Nevada, which is something interesting to look into because you're usually represented by a public defender because you can't afford your own attorney. So that's another interesting tidbit here. There were some other updates as well. I mean, Adam Silver was interviewed on the Amazon Prime broadcast, and he seemed a little bit shell-shocked having to discuss this. I mean, obviously, again, as we've gone over, these are the opening weeks of the season. There's a lot of great basketball going on. This is not what he wants to be talking about.
Yeah, and we're going to get into that with Colin Salau here in just a moment. So how do you sort of expect the case to sort of build here? Where do you sort of see the next shoe to drop here?
So I think it's going to be piece-by-piece reporting at this point. I mean, we're still trying to dig into it. There's avenues we're looking down. As far as when the next filing will be or the next announcement, it's really hard to tell. I mean, we did not know that this was going to happen. We had been following, the Terry Rozier issue and Malik Beasley, who, again, he also was not named in these indictments. And then all of a sudden, there was this press briefing announced. So as far as I can tell, that's the sort of way that we would hear from the feds again on it. We're not really going to know. But we at Front Office Sports and also elsewhere, everyone's going to be trying to find out as much as they can about all this.
Yeah, indeed. Ben Horney, thank you so much for the update. He's the author of the Asset Class newsletter, which you can sign up for at frontofficesports.com. Thanks, Ben. Well, as Ben just mentioned, the NBA FBI investigation is coming as the league is open to record ratings and some amazing performances from the likes of those like Victor Wembanyama. Let's bring in FOS reporter Colin Salau. So is this NBA FBI investigation overshadowing what's been a great week, Colin?
Yeah, I think it is. The news came out about the ratings for the NBA to start the season, and the opening night game, which featured a double overtime thriller between the Thunder and the Rockets, was the most watched opening night since LeBron moved to the Heat, which obviously had a lot of hype. There's a lot of Nielsen ratings right now and methodology changes that could have caused that, but it's still huge for it to be that high. And not only that, but we're seeing great games on national television every single night. And yet the conversation seems to be around these two gambling cases. Yesterday I had lunch with a couple of friends who don't follow the NBA, and one of them brought up the gambling issue. Oh, no. So, when casual fans are talking about that, that's really what's the story that's being told about the league right now. And it's tough because the season started off so hot.
very young team outside of Durant. They're going to be an impossible out in a 7-game series, and I'm predicting it right now. If the seeding lines up, you are getting the Thunder and the Rockets in the Western Conference Finals. There's not another team in the West that's going to be as good as the Rockets are when we get to playoff time.
The Craig Carton Show, only on SportsGrid.
I don't want people to stop discounting how good of a coach Rick Carlisle is, and I think they're going to find a way to get it done. I think they're going to be better than people think, and I also think if that's the case, then I'm fading someone in that division. You know who I'm fading, and that's the Milwaukee Bucks, who have now cut 2 players this year so that they can bring back both Antetokounmpo to play with Giannis.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
People who filed it are actually representatives of Chicago, so they're from the city. They're kind of saying, you know, this is really going to cripple the industry if we do this even more. I think it's really important when we talk about this stuff because so many places want to keep taxing sports betting more and more and more, which is well within their right, but there gets to a point where the bubble bursts and sports books either don't want to do business or they change the way they do it by passing it down to the customer.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
Football contest season is back, and so is the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, Season 2, the sharpest football contest show in the land. Focusing on all 3 Circus Sports contests and the Westgate Superbook Super Contest, we handicap the games and release our contest picks every week of the season. Featuring Super Contest champions Brady Cannon, James Salinas, and former NFL player Mike Pritchard, all team will have you prepared this season like none other. Check us out every weekend right here on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Just baseball coming your way in about 28 minutes from now, so make sure you stay tuned. Jack McMullen, who hosts the show and also, of course, works for the Miami Marlins radio network, joins us now, and Jack is getting ready to watch another baseball game tonight if he can make it through. Jack, I don't know, man. I'm going to have to, I think, punt this one tonight. I just don't see myself tonight around 11 p.m. in the 8th inning being up for this. I did fall asleep, came back, watched the end of that game. It was one of the greatest World Series games I've ever seen. I still don't think it tops the Rangers-Cardinals game. To me, that's always the one that I'll remember, aside from the Marlins winning the World Series, of course. But to me, this was up there in life. I'm 51 years old, so I mean, I'm talking top 3, top 4 all time for me.
Yeah, obviously I didn't get to watch Jack Morris in Game 7. I've heard nothing but amazing things about Jack Morris in Game 7 for Minnesota. So that's the one that compares, I guess. I remember the David Freese game when, you know, Freese hit that walk-off homer and Joe Buck gave us the "we will see you tomorrow night." But I just feel like this had a little bit more of the who's going to win it, who's going to finally get the job done type feel, as opposed to those heroics. And we got some heroics in this one, like the 7th inning home run from Ohtani and, of course, the walk-off in the 18th from Freddie Freeman. But I don't know, there were so many moving parts in last night's game, and it took 6.5 hours. I can appreciate that you're punting Game 4 tonight. I think I'm going to commit to like a 4 p.m. nap and then see when I wake up, and I should be good to go by 8.
Yeah, well, let's see. I got pickup from school, hitting practice after.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't get that luxury today. I don't. Man, you never know. Maybe I'll try to mix it in, but I doubt it. So I envy you on that. But try, the two kids thing and family thing, it gets in the way of that. So. Okay, the most underrated player in baseball continues to be Shohei Ohtani. I mean, I'm gone with this at this point. Like 9 times in a single game on base. Every time I think there's nothing left for this guy to do, he just one-ups it every single time. I don't think people understand how big that was yesterday. And the question becomes, and it's really fascinating to think about it, Jack, does that mean that that's it? Like tonight he comes up and he gets walked to start the game? Is that what we're doing here now? I don't blame them, by the way. I'm running out of stuff here. I've ran out of stuff. He just keeps one-upping it every game.
So I wouldn't blame them either if Toronto just tipped their cap and said, you know what, Shohei, take first base. We're not going to deal with you moving forward. I thought that's what Seattle was going to do with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. at the end of the ALCS. And it almost backfired on them because Vladdy still delivered some big hits in Game 6 and Game 7. So I don't think that's the worst strategy in the world. Just saying, you know what, take your base and you'll keep walking every single plate appearance. It's funny because it's not like a narrative was stewing about Shohei Ohtani being a playoff, I guess, unperformer, like a guy that will taper off a little bit in the postseason. But the postseason numbers were not that good until Game 4 of the NLCS, when he had the greatest game we've ever seen. And then yesterday he's on base 9 times, and it just feels like he was dialed into his approach. Like the doubles were 114 off the bat and 110 off the bat. The homers were just shot out of a cannon. It feels like this guy can do no wrong right now. It's very similar to what we saw a week and a half ago from Vladimir Guerrero Jr. So I don't blame Toronto for just waving the white flag against Shohei Ohtani yesterday. Force somebody else to beat you. It took 18 innings for someone else to beat them. So I feel like that makes a lot of sense, but it's funny, like this guy was elevating standards and then he was passing, like just blowing by previously set standards. And now he's like creating his own standards. Yeah. He's on side quests right now. So blowing past the record for, most times on base in a World Series. He tied a major league record by getting on base 9 times yesterday. That's not supposed to happen in the World Series.
No, it was just incredible to watch. Meanwhile, let's put a bow on this with Freddie Freeman, who had the big hit in the World Series last year against the Yankees. He does it again this year to walk off. It's a rare team right now, Jack, from my recollection watching, that has multiple Hall of Famers on a team, future Hall of Famer. I mean, Freeman is cemented after last year, so this is just gravy for him. Ohtani at this range plays a couple more years. He's going to be in there. Kershaw's in there. Mookie Betts is probably in there too. And by the way, all those other names that I mentioned aren't really in. And Freddie Freeman said, I'm not even doing anything yet. I haven't even gotten hot yet. It's just a tough team to beat. Like, I don't know how you do it.
Incredibly tough. Freddie Freeman is entering the conversation of some of the greatest first basemen that we've ever seen play this game. And, you'll hear it on the show coming up in a matter of minutes here. I call Freddie Freeman the red wine of baseball because it seems like he is fine tuning and getting better and shoring up every single aspect of his game as he gets older. This was a big burly kid when the Braves took him early in the draft out of high school in Southern California. So he debuts with the Atlanta Braves, and he's this big, powerful kid that all of a sudden has like this really good feel to hit. And then as his career goes on, you see him getting a little thinner and you see him, getting a little older and maybe losing a step or two on the base paths. But what remains the same? This guy can get barrel on baseball all the darn time. Freddie Freeman is one of the most gifted hitters that we have ever seen play this game. He's barreling towards 3,000 hits. There's no reason to believe that he will not get there. This is one of the best first basemen that we have ever seen play baseball.
The Dodgers threw the most pitchers in the history of the World Series in one game also. Glass now started, then Banda came in. Then I fell asleep. I missed these guys. Wroblewski, Treinen, and Dreyer. I woke back up, and there was Sasaki, followed by Emmett Sheehan, who was fantastic. Kershaw threw those few pitches, got that one out. I wonder why they said that was the last time he would throw in a game. I was curious. I don't know your thoughts on that. And then Edgardo Enriquez, and then, of course, this Will Klein, who afterward, I don't think Sandy Koufax has gone into that clubhouse in years for something like that. And he wanted to go see Will Klein. They let him in the clubhouse. That must have been a big thrill.
That was amazing. Will Klein, he doubled his previous high in innings pitched in any big league game. But yeah, Kershaw, I thought that was interesting, but I also kind of understand given the situation, they really want to use him when they're up by 8, down by 8, that kind of deal. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden they were thrusted into a situation where they needed Kershaw to get an out of Nathan Lucas in the 12th inning. But the Will Klein story and the subplot there of Koufax going into the clubhouse after the game, remember this an older gentleman in Sandy Koufax going in after midnight. Like, I would go to bed. I would just go home and go to bed. But he was so moved by the Will Klein performance. I spent 3 years calling games in AAA in Indianapolis. And the number of times that I checked in on Will Klein facing Tyler Heineman and Miles Straw over the last 3 years was egregious. And the fact that we got an International League matchup in the World Series told you how weird yesterday's ball game was. Klein was bouncing around. He was getting DFA'd left and right. He was a waiver pickup for everybody. And then the Dodgers said, you know what? He has 99. Let's see if we can find something. And all of a sudden, he gives you 4 of the biggest innings that you've had in the history of your franchise. So that game had every fun subplot, including Yoshinobu Yamamoto getting up, but Klein going 4, Enriquez going 2. I feel like Dave Roberts could be going into game 4 tonight, shuffling his bullpen around a little bit, saying like, okay, you know what, Trinan, you haven't been great, but Edgardo Enriquez, you've been awesome. I could see kind of a restacking of how the Dodgers go about their bullpen usage.
Let's go real quick to the Jays. George Springer, very questionable, I think. I mean, look, he's been going through it with Toronto. It's sort of miraculous that he's gotten this far. Without Springer, I don't know. Like, Jack, I still think the Jays have another win in them in this series. I hope they do. I'd like to see a longer series, but this is going to be close to a knockout blow for me.
That was a crushing blow, and this does feel dagger-ish. This feels like this could be the dagger game for the Dodgers. No Springer at the top, one of the best performers that we've ever seen in the postseason. That is a killer blow for Toronto.
Let's take a quick break. When we come back next, we'll take a look at the live odds over on FanDuel for the Jays and Dodgers tonight with Jack McMullen of Just Baseball. We'll be back right after this.
Very young team outside of Durant. They're going to be an impossible out in a 7-game series, and I'm predicting it right now. If the seeding lines up, you are getting the Thunder and the Rockets in the Western Conference Finals. There's not another team in the West that's going to be as good as the Rockets are when we get to playoff time.
The Craig Carton Show, only on SportsGrid.
I don't want people to stop discounting how good of a coach Rick Carlisle is. And I think they're going to find a way to get it done. I think they're going to be better than people think. And I also think if that's the case, then I'm fading someone in that division. You know who I'm fading, and that's the Milwaukee Bucks, who have now cut 2 players this year so that they can bring back both Antetokounmpo to play with Giannis.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
People who filed it are actually representatives of Chicago, so they're from the city. They're kind of saying, you know, this is really going to cripple the industry if we do this even more. I think it's really important when we talk about this stuff because so many places want to keep taxing sports betting more and more and more, which is well within their right. But there gets to a point where the bubble bursts and sports books either don't want to do business or they change the way they do it by passing it down to the customer.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
Football contest season is back, and so is the Las Vegas Football Contest Show. Season 2, the sharpest football contest show in the land. Focusing on all 3 Circa Sports contests and the Westgate Superbook Super Contest, we handicap the games and release our contest picks every week of the season. Featuring Super Contest champions Brady Cannon, James Salinas, and former NFL player Mike Pritchard, all team will have you prepared this season like none other. Check us out every weekend right here on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire. In just a few short hours, they're going to ask the Los Angeles Dodgers and Toronto Blue Jays to play another game, which means they got to get to the park in the next 3-4 hours. I'm going to guess, Jack, if I know anything about how this works, it's a light BP day. It's show up when you get here kind of day. for the players, for Dave Roberts and for Schneider. Those guys are probably at the park already preparing how the bleep are we going to get through this tonight. But let's show you the live odds, Jack, and I'll ask you your opinion on this. This is as big as the favorite the Dodgers are going to be in any game, I think, moving forward here. Minus 210 because they got Ohtani. And, part of this, Jack, just so we're, on the same page with the odds and understanding it, is you're paying a tax because Ohtani is there. I mean, literally, the guy could go 3 innings, give up 1 run, strike out 5. They could not like a matchup with 2 guys on and pull him. But because it's Ohtani, they got to make the odds that. Shane Bieber really good for Toronto. But as you said, I to win the World Series, Toronto has to win tonight. They don't have to win this game to make it a 5 or 6, but I think to win the World Series, somehow they got to pull this out.
It seems like it, because after this, you get a, Snell on normal rest. You get 4 days rest of Blake Snell. And then following that, you get Yoshinobu Yamamoto again in game 5 or in game 6, if this does go back to Toronto. So I don't know. I'm totally with you. I feel like if it goes 3-1 Dodgers, you're just kind of asking for 6 and you're hoping that somehow, some way Toronto ekes out game 5. But if they can make it a 2-2 series, right, that is so much more fun and it's intriguing. And all of a sudden we have that build and we know for certain that we're heading back to Toronto. But Ohtani, I do have questions as to how good his lower half feels. If you were up at, I'm going to ballpark 12:10 a.m. Eastern time last night, you saw Ohtani at second base stretching out his calf and you had a trainer come visit him at second base. I'm wondering if Ohtani feels good. And, granted, they're doing everything and they have every resource under the sun to make sure that Shohei Ohtani is a full go tonight for his start. But what if that calf is nagging him a little bit? I'm curious to see what Ohtani looks like. I'm also curious who has an arm still attached to their body after these starting pitchers leave the game. Shane Bieber, again, he was playing catch for 3 innings last night in the Toronto bullpen. We know he's going to go. They need 6 innings from Shane Bieber because how are they going to fill the rest? You assume Louis Varland, maybe Bassett gives you another inning, but Hoffman just went 2. Maybe Mason Fluharty goes again. It's going to be a mix and match deal. And I feel like each clubhouse should probably set up a whole bunch of cots on the ground and maybe have some white noise playing. So flowing water through a river and just make it nap time for a little bit before your 5 o'clock local first pitch.
Yeah, look, both teams are up against it. Maybe it is caution to the wind. We're at that point where there's only a few games left. Maybe guys are just going to go 3-4 times in a few days here in the series. By the way, the odds obviously have shifted significantly. The Dodgers are minus 500 now after their win yesterday. So if you think the Blue Jays could win the World Series, tonight is your night at plus 385 because you're not going to catch anybody taking Toronto after tonight if they lose to LA and go down 3-1. World Series MVP, Shohei Ohtani is minus 380. We got Guerrero at 10-1. I can't really make a case here for anyone else. I guess it would have to be Toronto winning to shift this. So is there a player on the Blue Jays, Jack, that could come out of nowhere here? Clement or someone? I don't know. I'm having a hard time looking at that, thinking that Ohtani's not the MVP. And by the way, if Toronto was to win in 7 games and it was close, would Ohtani still win the MVP? I mean, you have to ask yourselves that question.
That certainly is the case. Didn't LeBron do that in the NBA Finals 15 years ago? I think
against
he did.
Golden State, I think.
Yeah, that's right. No, I mean, listen, I think if Toronto does get back and they somehow win this series in 7 games, Alejandro Kirk is going to have a lot to do with that. So I saw Alejandro Kirk on the board at plus 1,100. Kirk homered last night. He's been the best player for the Blue Jays so far in this World Series through 3 games. So Alejandro Kirk, I think, will be a big reason for them coming back and winning this series. But I saw Ohtani was priced at 165 to win World Series MVP before a pitch was thrown in the World Series. Ahead of game 1, this guy's 165. There's no world that somebody should be plus 165 to win a World Series MVP when you're talking about 2 entire rosters that have yet to get going. But that is the Ohtani effect. The other one that jumped out to me, if he threw a pitch last night, Yoshinobu Yamamoto absolutely would have had a case for World Series MVP. I loved that guy getting up and throwing in the Dodger bullpen last night. And it seemed like if that game did go to a 19th, it was going to be Yamamoto's 19th inning. So if he threw on a 1-day rest following a complete game, finished the job for the Dodgers, and then got another win in game 6, that would have been the case for Yamamoto. But now it's Ohtani or bust, I think.
So once the World Series is over, which probably by the time you're back on the show with me here, Jack, I would assume over the next couple of weeks, we'll dive into the hot stove and we'll dive into free agency. And recently The Athletic, courtesy of my buddy Jim Bowden, put out a lot of predictions as far as contracts and money is concerned. I was a little stunned here to see this kind of money going around in a season where we got the CBA coming up. I mean, look, Jim knows a lot more than I do about this, but for me, I feel like all these numbers are very high. I don't know that teams are going to spend with the non-clarity as to how baseball is going to work, by the way, in the future. I mean, it may be worth it just to wait out for a year or two, but I would pretty much say that Kyle Tucker of the Cubs and a free agent is going to be the highest paid guy and probably get 300 to 400 million. That seems reasonable. But I would be concerned if I was an agent of some of these other guys. Like, show me that graphic again, Luke. Kyle Schwarber's going to get 5 years, $160 million from somebody this offseason? I don't see that.
The one that jumps out to me is Bo Bichette, who was brutal in 2024. Comes back in 25, was really good, but he struggles defensively, and he's dealing with a knee issue right now. He's been banged up over the last few years. He's going to get $190 million. Like, I read this article from Jim, and again, great work from Jim Bowden, but I just felt like every single number I saw was drastically inflated from what it probably should be. But that's kind of the baseball market. How many times, Craig, have you and I sat here and said, that's about $30 million more than I was expecting this guy to get? and that's kind of been the case over the last couple of off seasons. So I understand where he's coming from, but those are some humongous dollar figures being thrown out there right now. I don't know if I see that, especially with 2027 looming. It feels like the 1+1 deal is going to be all the rage.
I agree. I do. I think that's where we're headed. All right, Jack, have a great show. We'll catch up again soon. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Craig.
We'll wrap it up next.
Very young team outside of Durant. They're going to be an impossible out in a 7-game series, and I'm predicting it right now. If the seeding lines up, you are getting the Thunder and the Rockets in the Western Conference Finals. There's not another team in the West that's going to be as good as the Rockets are when we get to playoff time.
The Craig Carton Show, only on SportsGrid.
I don't want people to stop discounting how good of a coach Rick Carlisle is. And I think they're going to find a way to get it done. I think they're going to be better than people think. And I also think if that's the case, then I'm fading someone in that division. You know who I'm fading, and that's the Milwaukee Bucks, who have now cut 2 players this year so that they can bring back both Antetokounmpo to play with Giannis.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
People who filed it are actually representatives of Chicago, so they're from the city. They're kind of saying, this is really going to cripple the industry if we do this even more. I think it's really important when we talk about this stuff because so many places want to keep taxing sports betting more and more and more, which is well within their right. But there gets to a point where the bubble bursts and sports books either don't want to do business or they change the way they do it by passing it down to the customer.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
Football contest season is back, and so is the Las Vegas Football Contest Show. Season 2, the sharpest football contest show in the land. Focusing on all 3 Circus Sports contests and the Westgate Superbook Super Contest, we handicap the games and release our contest picks every week of the season. Featuring Super Contest champions Brady Cannon, James Salinas, and former NFL player Mike Pritchard, all team will have you prepared this season like none other. Check us out every weekend right here on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. As Jack and I were just discussing, we got another World Series game coming up later tonight. For those of you who braved it last night, get ready because we got another one coming up tonight. We'll hit on that. We'll also talk about Lane Kiffin who was seemingly thrown under the bus and then threw some shade back. Also, Cam Scadaboo gets a visit in the hospital. That and a whole lot more as we take care of business, as we say, here on this Tuesday. It's time now for some Last Licks. Strange media appearance from a head coach in college football after a loss this past week. Congrats to Mississippi. They go to Norman, Oklahoma, and pick up a rare win in that stadium. A hard place to go get a victory, but they end up winning. Ole Miss defeats Oklahoma. But what's interesting was Oklahoma coach and former defensive coordinator for Clemson, Brent Venables, said that Oklahoma had the better team after the loss to the Rebels. Very strange comment that was made there, considering you just lost the game and you were at home. I don't think that gives you the right to go any further with it. But Lane Kiffin, who is no stranger to taking other people's comments and working with them a little bit, had this response to Venables' claim that his team was better.
Lane, a big win on the road against Oklahoma. Just curious as your thoughts following the game. Coach Brent Venables said he felt like he had the better team. Just your overall thoughts on that.
That's an interesting take. That's a hot take. You have a better team. I wouldn't have thought that people watching would say that. You know, I felt that we won at their place in weather that as a defensive head coach you would normally, wish for, and won by 8 points. And I think we left a lot out there. I think we should have won by a couple scores. So I don't know how he evaluated that game, that they were the better team. I mean, we had way more yards, 21 first downs to 14, and we played, 87 plays of offense, and they had 1 sack and didn't force any turnovers. That's a interesting take, but whatever he needs to say.
And also following up to road trips
maybe
to Georgia.
Maybe they had the better team last year too when we beat them. Sorry.
Yes, sir. Following up on the road against Georgia.
Maybe you had the better team in Oklahoma when we beat them 55-19 in the national championship. Maybe you had the better team at Clemson when we beat them 45-40 in the national championship at Alabama. Next question, my bad. You got me on that.
Lane Kiffin, definitely ready for that. This guy is going to be the highest paid coach in college football this offseason. I don't know if it's going to be at Mississippi or somewhere else, but he's done tremendous things for Mississippi. He's got his pick, Penn State, Florida, probably, LSU. We'll see. Okay, Cam Scadaboo was fantastic at running back for the New York Giants this season. Once they started handing this guy off the ball, Scadaboo was the very best rookie running back in the National Football League, ahead of Ashton Jeanty. It was not close. Unfortunately, he fractured his ankle, had to have surgery. He's going to miss the remainder of the season. But after the surgery, he had a surprise visitor at Penn Presbyterian. Eagles chief of security, Dom DeSandro, of course, the Eagles played the Giants on Sunday, dropped off pizza and cheesecakes for the Giants rookie while he was at the hospital. Not a fracture, dislocating his ankle on Sunday. Really nice move here by Philadelphia. And yeah, why not? Get some cheesecakes. All right, let's end the show with Netflix's next attempt to bring people in to watch live sports. We already know they got the home run derby. Are they going to hit a home run with this? Are you kidding me? Floyd Mayweather Jr. is going to fight Manny Pacquiao again? I mean, those fights stunk when they fought each other 15 years ago, and they're going to fight again now? My goodness. Here's the thing. A lot of people are going to watch this just because of the star power, but neither of these fighters can fight anymore. It's just going to be a lot of defense. It's going to be no fun, but I'm sure they'll have a concert beforehand and they'll have some fun stuff going on in the ring, and we'll all watch, and it'll be like Mike Tyson coming back again. The state of boxing is just so poor. I cannot believe that next year we're going to see Mayweather Pacquiao fight again. It's got to be 10 years at least since they fought the last time, but I'll probably check it out. I'm honest with you. I'll probably tune in and fall asleep 3 rounds in. That'll do it for our show today. Thanks to all of our guests, Coach Young, Bill Bender, and of course, thanks to Jack McMullen for coming on the show as well. Thanks to our director, Luke, and for my producer, Frank. I'm Craig Mish. We'll have our midweek edition of NewsWire tomorrow. I'll also be back with Kevin Walsh tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern. If you want a baseball preview, I'll do it for you then. Have a great day, everyone.